Welcome back. Now, Dr. Odenyi, before I asked you that question, I actually checked the Constitution. I said that it's not allowed, but I wanted you to tell us. So, Yami, what do you think would happen if, let's say, in the course of amending the Constitution, the lawmakers said, okay, let the states be allowed to do their census so that it takes the burden off, you know, like we have the state electoral commissions then, so that they can now send observers to monitor what's going on during the state census. What do you think?
Look, that would be a curious one, but you know the classical management case is that when there is authority, there must be corresponding responsibility. So if you give states, for example, for the sake of election, you give them the authority to conduct census and determine their population, then the responsibility is that you should not make population a factor in revenue allocation. Because with the current situation that we have now, that population is a factor in revenue allocation, particularly at the local government level in terms of resources, you realize that there's an incentive for states. That's where you realize, for example, that anytime there's a natural disaster in Nigeria and it happens at a state level, the numbers reported sometimes does not look reasonable. So you hear that there was a flood in a village. They call the place a village, and they will say, so hundreds of thousands were affected. And I keep asking, you said it's a village, not a town. How did so hundreds of thousands get to live in that village?
But we understand that the rural areas are more populated than the urban areas.
You know, we have agreed we don't count. So all those things, you know, there are certain myths in Nigeria. Have you noticed in Nigeria that if there's an incident and maybe there is a violence and people die, there are no 5 people you will call that will tell us the same number of people that died. The norm is that the official record will be 7 people died, then the people on ground will say they are 15, while the relatives of those people will say they are 25. So realize that we have that issue. And I think there's also a cultural dimension, because let's be very sincere. What they say in management is that culture is strategy for lunch. We have a Yoruba saying, for example, that says, I can come on follow more, which means that you don't count somebody's children for him. He's the one that tells you how many children. Yes, so you have those cultural drives. Now, and let's be very sincere, that doesn't mean that the Yoruba culture or the Nigerian culture prevents people from having birth control or managing how many children they have. We have another saying in Yoruba land that which means it's good for me to have an elite, outstanding child than to have many children not well taken care of. We have a Yoruba saying that which means that when you have so many children that you don't have resources to manage, then you are multiplying poverty. So you realize what happens is that we need to be able to balance that to ensure that we help people to understand the part of our culture that make us become responsible. Don't forget the issue about religion too.
Okay. All right. Dr. Abdul, we're winding down now. Where do we go from here and how do we go?
I think we need to be very realistic, and we need to build a new culture on numbers, on statistics. I think that's quite key. And I like his last statement about some of the cultural dimensions to aversions to number. And I think you could find that in so many ways, in so many other cultural settings. In the typical Hausa setting, you say that the mouth that the god carves will never lack anything to eat. So even if you have as many as whatever, they will always get something to eat. But the reality also that I was trying to draw out earlier is that once you continue to leave people from poverty, the tendency for the numbers to increase is always very high. And there are so many explanations and analyses around that. It's about education, it's about health services, it's about sexual and reproductive health access. So once they lack all those things, because those are basic characteristics of poverty, once they lack some of all those things, the tendency for numbers, for giving birth, and all that, and even hoping that one of them will become better to be able to take care of, or they need more hands to support them in the farm or in hawking on the street and all those things. So there are so many things that count. But I think I'd like to remind the commissioner there that Lagos may be a bit different when it comes to the birth registration. In other part of the country, I work on birth registration. And I knew that, look, there are some states in this country where birth registration is not up to 20%. It's not up to 20%. So how do you do that? How do you use birth registration to deal with such things? So it's a big problem. We need to understand. There are some states that are deeply rural, that home delivery is far higher than hospital delivery. And nobody follow up to actually issue birth certificate. The same thing, death. People die, more people die at home than they die in the hospital. So if people die at home Nobody goes out there. In my own cultural setting, you don't, somebody does not die at home and you start running to the hospital and say, can you issue me a death certificate? The death certificate issue may come up if the person has a bank account. And then you want to go and you want to claim the account or whatever, then you will need evidence for the banks. So they are still deep. The banking culture is low, and that's where I also disagree with Fayemi earlier, that look, that we can use the numbers in the bank to determine how many people are banking. But the truth about it is that how many? Ask the bankers, they'll tell you. Also, that the banking culture in the country is also very, very low.
We have to come back here.
Deep, we need to move on. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Abdul.
And coming back here, let me put this question of, is Nigeria's population bloated, and do we need to control it?
Well, I must say that Nigeria's population is not really bloated. We need to control population just like we need to control everything. But you do not control population, you can only manage it. Because you can't insist that a man should not sleep with his wife. More so that you have not given them what they could use to prevent pregnancy. And some religions, some faith-based organizations do not even believe in that. They believe that you can have as many as you want. We talk about culture.
Even if you can't take care of them.
Well, that's why we're talking about education. Education gives a lot of exposure. Education helps you to know that certain things are even injurious to you as a person, because no parent is happy when the child is not doing well. That's why we're talking about women empowerment. When you empower a girl child, when she doesn't go into early marriage, because her body is, by the time she finishes tertiary institution, her body is ready for marriage, she's ready emotionally, and because she probably has even an SSC or a university degree, she wants to give her child better education. That's why it's been said even at the United Nations General Assembly that when you invest in a woman, it's a cycle of profitability for any nation. So our women, we must invest largely in our women. We must invest in our youth so that we can also harness demographic dividends and enjoy it. And I like to say this to Dr. Hussein. Just what we have in Lagos is what we have in every other state. In every state, the National Population Commission makes sure that we have registrars that go into the rural areas. Every state does the mop-up. Every state has registrars that go. We take registrations from the local birth attendants, the Baba BAs, and the rest. Sometimes we even pick them from the gutter, and we take them. We go to orphanages and all that. Every state does that.
Dr. Udeni, just a very quick one. How many children were born on New Year's Day?
On New Year's Day. Well, you know, the UNICEF gave us a figure.
No, I'm asking you from the Population Commission now. How many?
Well, from the Population Commission, I had even actually asked that. We usually collate together, and that we're going to get in the week.
Okay, all right.
Collation is going on.
Okay,
yes,
thank you very much. We've been speaking with Abimbola Salu Hudeni, Commissioner for National Population Commission. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Fayemi, a development analyst. Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Hussaini Abdul, Country Director of Plan International and a development expert. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Sunrise will be back in a moment. Please don't go away.